If you voted for Joe Biden, I ask you to please watch this video. If you didn't vote for Joe Biden, I ask you to just share this video, because this is it. This is what you need to understand. Oil prices fall as Biden weighs releasing 180 million barrels from reserves in desperate attempt to lower fuel prices. Joe Biden, the Biden administration, they are planning to dump 31% of our strategic petroleum reserve because of high gas prices. Why are the gas prices so high? A combination of things, some of which is what's happening in Ukraine, obviously. There's also Biden shutting down Keystone, which caused speculative drive, meaning that when they announce they're going to be shutting down infrastructure in terms of oil and crude transportation, speculators, investors, and companies then expect that in the future, without this development, supply will not meet demand, causing massive price increases. This causes a speculative increase. Blame those people, absolutely. But of course, the Biden administration knew this was a potentiality. They've also banned fracking on public lands, which is also restricting the ability of oil production here in the U.S. We were a net oil exporter under Trump. That is no longer the case here. And there are a lot of factors there. I'm not trying to just make it seem like Biden is to blame for literally everything. There's war. There's OPEC nations. There's oil profits. All of that stuff plays a role. But if anyone's telling you it's any one thing, or you hear from the left, it's because of oil profits, and you'll hear from the right, it's all Biden's fault. Well, it's partly Biden's fault. Oil profits do play a role, but it's not so simple. All of this is interconnected. In my opinion, I think that Joe Biden and the Democrats want chaos in Eastern Europe and the Middle East because they're trying to build oil pipelines. So this is the please hear me out to all of these Biden voters. Joe Biden shuts down Keystone XL. Why? Legitimate question for all of you. Why do you think he did it? Keystone was not delivering crude. Okay. The Democrats, the United States, the CIA, all of the special interests in this country wanted to build what's called the Qatar-Turkey pipeline through Qatar, Turkey, Syria into Europe to offset Russia's Gazprom oil monopoly. And Gazprom runs a major line through Ukraine. You see how this is all interconnected. Why shut down oil production or transportation in the United States and then fight wars to get a pipeline in the Middle East? Now, under Donald Trump, something happened. For all of the things there's a lot to complain about with Donald Trump. Don't get me wrong. I complain about him quite a bit. But Donald Trump was crushing ISIS. Donald Trump was de-escalating tensions between Russia. Of course, you can look at the establishment narrative, I suppose, and say Trump was a Russian asset. It's just nonsensical and stupid and has no bearing on what's happening. ISIS was crushed. Syria was stabilizing. You see, the Biden administration, Democrats, Barack Obama, George W. Bush, going back, the military-industrial complex, they want that oil pipeline, man. But not here in the U.S., and now our prices are going nuts. Everything we're seeing with Syria and Ukraine, it's related, and Trump had nothing to do with it, other than getting our troops out of there and saying, why are we wasting money on this? Shore up America's resources and defenses. But call it fascist, call it whatever you want. Because now we're seeing Joe Biden dumping 31%. And do you know what this means? 1 week. Let me just show you. In 2021, the U.S. consumed an average about 19.78 million barrels of petroleum per day. This was an increase in consumption about 1.6 million. Let me tell you right off the bat, we got to get off our addiction to oil. Hands down. We need solar, we need wind, we need large storage facilities, we need geothermal, we need tidal energy. And that means we can start building all of this stuff now, and we should. We should be doing research into it. We should be heavily investing in fusion technology because we're getting close, it feels like. But being dependent upon this high energy output resource, fossil fuels, is putting us in danger. Nuclear energy is also a very, very excellent option. Now, we were going to have to use fossil fuels for heating, for transportation, but if we can dramatically reduce our consumption on fossil fuels if we shift to electricity generation through renewables, and then we get all the climate change people on board too, because even nuclear energy's got no carbon emissions, right? That's what we need to do. But right now, man, it's going to negatively impact everybody. You're going to see, let me show you, man. Inflation has lessons for a very entitled generation, says BlackRock co-founder. Yeah, the company that's making it worse is telling you it's going to get even worse. So I hope you're paying attention to what it means when Joe Biden says 31% of our reserves are going to go out to stave off high prices for 9 days. 9. The Strategic Petroleum Reserve ain't that big. Now I want to get into all this, but I'm going to do a shout out right now because let me just say one thing. The ruble has recovered. The sanctions, in my opinion, did not work to stop Russia. Even the Biden administration is now saying they weren't supposed to deter him or anything like that. Russia has just jumped and become independent. They're now selling oil in rubles. They're doing deals with India and China. Saudi Arabia is talking about selling oil to China for yuan. This could be the end of the American empire. I'm sure a lot of people probably like the idea, but it means your life will get bad or will get worse. So I want to do a quick shout out today for safeandreadymeals.com. That's right, Tim Pool shilling for emergency food buckets. This past month, man, I've shouted out Safe and Ready Meals more times than I've ever done, and it's because it's kind of crazy. Things keep getting worse. You know, I said last year, I was like, look, there's chicken shortages, prices are going up, consider having an emergency food supply, because sometimes it rains and you get stranded or you get locked in your house or the power goes out, have a way to get some food, and you can at safeandreadymeals.com. Full disclosure, sponsored spot. Buying from them helps support our work and our show. But, you know, as much as I don't like just shouting, I don't do a lot of ads, shout outs for Safe and Ready Meals. It's because I genuinely believe it's important. And considering we just keep getting more and more news about how it's getting worse, when BlackRock's co-founder or CEO, whatever, comes out and says, you've never seen anything like this, buckle up and get ready. That's what they're saying. I'm like, okay, consider Safe and Ready Meals if you want to have this stuff. 25-year shelf life. You put it in your closet. You forget about it. And just make sure you're taking care of yourself, your friends, your family. I'm not telling you to build a bunker and hide 30 years worth of beans. It's one bucket. You can get 1 month supply for $300. Like seriously, 4-week emergency food supply with 2,000 calories per day. It lasts 25 years, and you get 2 buckets. Like I just want to point out, like the buckets are buckets. We use them as trash bins. Like after you got a bucket, it's fantastic. Consider it. Do what you want to do for yourself, and let's talk about what's happening with oil. The Biden administration is considering releasing up to 180 million barrels of oil over several months from the Strategic Petroleum Reserve. Over several months. Okay. All right. The White House is desperately looking at options to lower fuel prices. The move would mark the 3rd time the U.S. has tapped its strategic reserves in the past 6 months. This is the largest release in the near 50-year history. So far, they have not managed to lower prices as world demand has nearly reached pre-pandemic levels. Oil prices have surged since Russia invaded Ukraine. Brent crude, the world benchmark, soared to 139 earlier this month, the highest since 2008, and was near 110 in Asian trading on Thursday. Joe Biden will deliver remarks on Thursday on his administration's actions, the White House said. Ladies and gentlemen, I give you the official Strategic Petroleum Reserve.gov website. It's spr.doe.gov. The total amount of sweet oil, 249.8 million, and sour is 318.5 for a total of 568.3 million barrels. 568.3 million barrels. That means Joe Biden is talking about dumping 31% of our strategic oil reserve for what, 9 days worth of relief? Now, granted, they want to do it slowly over several months, but the Strategic Petroleum Reserve was supposed to be for, war. And I guess that's what's happening. But it really seems like what Joe Biden is doing is tapping into our emergency rainy day fund because he looks bad. Look, gas prices are really high. But is that a reason to dump 31% of our reserves? I'll put it this way. Let's say that you have an emergency rainy day fund. in your bank, your bank, you got maybe a couple $100 to $1,000 saved up, and you're like, this is for emergencies, we don't touch it. Maybe some of you have more than that. Maybe you're a little older and you saved up a couple grand. One day, you're trying to buy food, and you notice the food prices have gone up, and you say, well, I don't want my wife's angry, my family, they're getting angry because, they see the receipts, they see how much we're spending. I got an idea. I'll buy some of this with the rainy day fund. That way it seems like your checking account isn't that low. That's what it basically feels like. Perhaps people are going to have to pay higher gas prices, and dipping into our emergency reserves at a time when there's fears of nuclear war and World War III is one of the dumbest things you can do. But hey, look, man, far be it from me to point that out, I guess. Let me just stress that again. Do you think NATO could get involved in a ground war with Russia? It's entirely possible, isn't it? Now we're hearing good news in that troops are pulling back from Kiev. Ukraine says they're just repositioning. Vladimir Putin's apparently fled to a nuclear bunker, and there are people saying, they're going to do a nuclear war. Vladimir Putin may have already been in the nuclear bunker. They may be retreating from Kiev because Kiev is accepting defeat. Or maybe Russia's losing. Maybe things are de-escalating. Or maybe Russia is getting ready for some kind of tactical nuclear strike, nuclear artillery. We learned the other day that two fighter jets that Russia deployed that entered Swedish airspace, violated their airspace, were armed with nuclear weapons. Now, I'm not saying nuclear war is possible, but do you really need to be trying to earn favor with people at a time like this? Now, perhaps it's naive of me. Perhaps the attempt from Joe Biden to lower prices, which isn't really working, is because he wants to make sure the economy keeps churning, because if we go to war, you need people to be able to keep working. But wouldn't it make more sense then to save your emergency supply if a war were to break out? I think, in my opinion, Joe Biden is doing this because his approval rating's in the gutter, because people are complaining, they're unhappy. We have this from Yahoo Finance. What President Biden releasing oil from the reserves may mean for gas prices. They say conceptually, such a release would help the oil market rebalancing in 2022, increasing supply by 1 million barrels per day for 6 months. For example, this would reduce the amount of necessary price-induced demand destruction, the sole oil rebalancing mechanism currently available in a world devoid of inventory buffers and blah, 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 blah. Okay, you know what, man? Oil prices have come off their highs around 140 a barrel. We use in the U.S. just about 20 million barrels per day. You think releasing 1 million barrels, I put an S on it, 1 million barrels per day for 6 months is going to have an impact on that? Sure, we're going to offset, 5% of our costs? Now, perhaps dumping this supply into the oil market will try and is an attempt to force prices to go down. Because if we release this strategic oil, we can sell it at cheaper rates, causing competition with these other, countries. And then maybe they'll be forced to lower their prices or whatever. Ultimately, I just don't see that happening. It's not a substantive increase in oil availability. 1 million barrels per day. How much does the world use? No, I think this is Joe Biden trying to make it look like he's doing something, giving temporary relief, and ultimately it's just going to backfire and blow up in all of our faces. You want to know why I think that? Fortune reports Russia's ruble has almost totally recovered. Does that mean sanctions aren't working? So the propaganda, the media, everybody came out and was making fun of Russia because the ruble was in the gutter. And they were like, if you get fined in 1 million rubles, it's going to be 10 cents soon. It's recovered. Almost totally. It's actually gone a little bit up from where it was. All the sanctions have done is made Russia more resilient and has given them leverage and taken away our leverage. It was stupid. Well, unless you're trying to tank the United States, because now Russia's got their own payment system. They're building that up with China. You've created incentive for Russia and China to just dump the petrodollar. Here we go. The Russian ruble by Wednesday had bounced back from the fall it took after the U.S. and European allies moved to bury the Russian economy. That failed. Russian President Vladimir Putin has resorted to extreme financial measures to blunt the West's penalties. While the West has imposed unprecedented levels of sanctions against the Russian economy, Russia's central bank has jacked up interest rates to 20%, and the Kremlin has imposed strict capital controls on those wishing to exchange their rubles for dollars or euros. It's a monetary defense Putin may not be able to sustain as long-term sanctions weigh down the Russian economy. I don't agree. I think this is just wishful thinking. When Russia is announcing they're going to be selling oil in rubles to adversarial nations, then countries are going to have to buy Russian currency. They're basically saying we have to invest in your economy, Vladimir Putin. That's good for them. It was good for us when we controlled the petrodollar. China's now going to be doing the exact same thing. The ruble was trading at roughly 85 to the US dollar, roughly where it was before Russia started the invasion. Speaking to Norway's parliament on Wednesday, Ukraine's president urged Western allies to inflict still greater financial pain on Russia. The only means of urging Russia to look for peace are sanctions. That's just not true. It's just not what's going to happen. Seeking Alpha, talk about some amazing reporting. Russia's 3-step program to put the ruble on a gold standard. Oh, man. This is going to get interesting. Step 1, offer a premium fixed price for gold to domestic Russian banks who can't sell their gold internationally due to sanctions, encouraging domestic gold flows into Bank of Russia. Strengthen the ruble internationally by insisting on energy payments in rubles, turning fixed price into a premium internationally as well, encouraging international gold flow into Russia. 3, turn the ruble into a credible gold substitute at a fixed rate. The 5,000 ruble window closes June 30th. Does Russia declare the ruble convertible to gold after that? At what rate? Rather than speculate on the ruble, just buy the gold. The idea was discussed in more depth with members of my private investing community, the Endgame Investor. A lot of people are speculating this is the move Russia's going to be making. First, buy the domestic Russian gold supply. Next, strengthen the ruble and drain gold from the West. Finally, turn the ruble into a gold substitute. They say Russia eventually needs to sell gold at some point to get stuff it needs, but Russia can do this without actually moving any of its gold. How so? It can simply declare the ruble a hard gold substitute at a fixed exchange rate. In other words, a gold standard. But before it does that, it first must make sure it has required reserves if tested, which it's now doing by splitting the arbitrage offered by Western powers that have sanctioned its gold and cut it off from global markets. The Bank of Russia must also make sure its monetary policy is tight enough, now at 20% interest rates to hold the line. Then it can insist on payments for Russian commodities in rubles, now hard gold substitutes. This is amazing. That will effectively stabilize the Russian currency against gold. And gold, you're not sanctioned in gold. This is fascinating. Fiat currency, currency backed by your faith in government. If Russia says, no, our ruble is backed by gold, so you can redeem it for gold. Well, now the ruble will be trading internally backed by this hard asset. Getting off the gold standard was a big gambit. And we thought we could do it because we were floating, right? This fiat currency. Everybody had confidence in it. When the West comes to try and shake confidence in the ruble, they need only be like, it's worth gold. Now, you may have, let's say you have $1 billion worth of gold sitting in reserves that anybody can go and exchange at any time. For the average person who's working, there's 10 billion rubles in circulation, which means there's not enough gold to pay out the rubles. But the rubles represent their true value in gold. And most people aren't going to rush to the bank to take the gold out. You see why the gold standard will work, or could work. There's a lot of issues. A run on the banks could cause problems, but the Russian government can just put restrictions. It's not the same. It's not the same as it used to be. They have centralized banking. They have currency controls. Not that I'm saying it's perfect. There's pitfalls. But the general idea is you're walking around with pieces of paper that are actually going to be backed by something of value. And so you don't care what the sanctions against Russia are because you know, well, if the Russian government can't handle it, at least I'll get my gold back. And what does Joe Biden have to offer us? They're pushing Russia in this direction. They've made Russia more resilient. They've made them stronger. And it seems like we're the ones panicking. Now we can't buy oil from Russia. So what do? We dump 31% of our reserves. Granted, I assume we're not going to be replenishing those reserves as we're dumping the oil. That makes no sense. Yeah. Now we can see that something big is coming. A lesson for a very entitled generation, says BlackRock co-founder. For the first time, this generation is going to go into a store and not be able to get what they want. said the co-founder of the world's biggest asset manager. And we have a very entitled generation that has never had to sacrifice. You know, part of me looks forward to that. I know that most of you understand hard work and hardship and are willing to do what it takes to survive. Man, but I see this story and part of me is like, it's about time the millennial generation, and many Gen Xers or Zennials, whatever you want to call them, understood what it means to actually have to survive. That you can't walk into a store and just get a pizza. That you don't get to have a job getting paid $60,000 a year because you write celebrity gossip. You're going to have to actually contribute to society. Truth be told, you know, what show do I... I take issue with a lot of how our economy works, to be completely honest. And I always have, ever since I was a little kid. I never understood why it was that a baseball player got paid more than a firefighter. Just didn't understand it. Firefighters risk their lives. Baseball players play a game. How is it? How is it that I make more money complaining about my feelings on the internet than you do as someone who's actually fixing roads and building structures? Yeah, I certainly take issue with how economics works, but you know, it's the system. It is what it is. You know, doing a show like this isn't something, you know, as simple as I do my show. It's not the most expensive thing. I got started with just a GoPro. I would put it on top of my monitor and press record, and then I would upload it. Seriously, that's what I was doing. So I certainly take issue with a lot of what's going on. But I'm also cognizant of these facts, that the computers and cameras I use are built by cheap indentured servitude or slave labor in Southeast Asia, that the clothes I wear are much the same, that I'd prefer to buy everything American, but the global economy has been built this way over several decades, namely by establishment uniparty politicians. In my world, I would say firefighters, EMTs, I'd say police officers, they're all getting paid way more money. I'd say that people who are doing trade work and actually maintaining this country, farmers, making way more money. Instead, entitled generation. In New York, how many people work for these media companies where it's like, I didn't have an article today, so I didn't write one, and they get paid $600 anyway? That's just insane to me. Can you just think about that? There are people who get paid $300 to $500 a day to literally write clickbait trash about celebrities. Because it works. Influence and attention economy. It's a scary thought. That's where we're going. When people live in digital spaces and on the internet, the economy is going to be attention economy. So it's just going to be waving your arms in the air as hard as you can to make money, and that's what that's happening. People are going to have to understand what it means to work hard. That's what's coming. But you know what? The good news is most of those people who don't understand it are the ones who vote for Biden. So look, you want to keep voting for free stuff? You're voting for no stuff. Whatever, man. I'm willing to go out and grow some vegetables and farm. We got chickens. I go out. You hear me yelling at them every day over at Chicken City. I'm ready to work hard. I've always worked hard. And if everything just hit the fan, I'd have no problem going out, farming, foraging, hunting. And in fact, I got to be honest, it sounds like a lot of fun. It sounds like a lot of fun to try and wire solar panels to get electricity because, you know, in a certain sense, a post-apocalyptic world would be fun. However, I think most of you realize we live in absolute luxury, and we wouldn't want to give it up. Maybe it's fun to spend a weekend camping and go to a survival camp where you work hard and enjoy yourself as you try and sort things through, but only for a couple days, because eventually hardship is hard and winter is coming. But I'll tell you, my friends, winter is coming. You can see it right here. Thanks, Joe. So maybe safeandreadymeals.com can help you out. Maybe you've already got your stuff. Do what you got to do. I'll leave it there. Next segment's coming up at 1 p.m. on this channel. Thanks for hanging out, and I'll see you all then.